Imagine standing on a city street in southern China and watching a small aircraft lift straight up between skyscrapers. No pilot touching controls, no runway, no noise like a helicopter, just a smooth vertical takeoff, a quiet climb, and then it disappears over the skyline carrying real passengers. In 2024, Chinese company XPeng Aero HT introduced what it calls a modular flying car system. Unlike traditional aircraft, this design combines a six-wheel ground vehicle with a detachable electric vertical takeoff and landing aircraft known as an eVTOL. The production facility supporting this project sits in Guangzhou and spans roughly 180,000 square meters. That makes it one of the first large-scale factories dedicated specifically to flying car manufacturing. Not a prototype lab, not a research hangar, a factory. Pre-orders for the vehicle have already reached into the hundreds, with public announcements pointing toward mass production beginning in 2026. That timeline matters. While many Western aviation companies are still navigating regulatory pathways, China has moved into the scaling phase. Is this simply ambitious marketing, or did China just push the flying car industry into industrial reality? To understand how this happened, you have to rewind more than a decade. XPeng Aero HT began early research and development efforts around 2013. Over time, the company reportedly conducted more than 15,000 internal test flights across multiple generations of prototypes. Those test cycles refined propulsion systems, battery stability, structural integrity, and flight control software. This was not a single flashy demonstration. It was a long engineering process designed to transition from proof of concept to repeatable performance. The flagship model, often referred to as the land aircraft carrier, integrates a six-rotor electric flight module stored within a ground vehicle chassis. The driving component transports the aircraft to a designated takeoff area. Once deployed, the eVTOL system lifts vertically using distributed electric propulsion. The estimated flight range currently stands at approximately 30 to 50 kilometers per charge, focusing on short urban mobility routes rather than long-distance aviation. This is not meant to cross continents. It is designed to leap over congestion. China's Civil Aviation Administration has simultaneously been developing regulatory structures for what officials describe as the low-altitude economy. That phrase signals something larger than a single vehicle. It implies airspace management, safety protocols, certification systems, and designated flight corridors below traditional commercial aviation altitudes. Beijing has targeted 2027 as a milestone year for broader regulatory completion. Why align policy acceleration with industrial production, unless deployment is expected soon? The technology inside this system is equally strategic. The aircraft relies on distributed electric propulsion, meaning multiple rotors provide lift redundancy. If one motor fails, others compensate. Battery systems include layered management controls to reduce overheating risks and ensure power stability during vertical ascent and descent. Carbon fiber composite materials reduce overall weight while preserving structural strength. These are aerospace-level materials adapted for hybrid mobility. The modular aspect separates this vehicle from many American eVTOL efforts. In the United States, companies such as Joby Aviation and Archer Aviation are primarily focused on air taxi services, where vehicles operate between vertiports under centralized fleet control. China's design leans toward personal ownership integration. Drive to a launch point, deploy flight module, land, reattach, continue driving. That hybrid approach blurs the boundary between car and aircraft. Is this simply an evolution of air taxis, or is it an attempt to redefine private mobility entirely? Autonomous flight assistance also plays a key role. The aircraft integrates AI-supported stabilization systems, route planning software, and real-time navigation monitoring. While full autonomy remains regulated and restricted globally, Assisted flight functions reduce pilot burden and enhance safety consistency. In dense urban airspace, software reliability becomes as important as mechanical integrity. The speed of development reflects a broader industrial strategy. China already dominates global electric vehicle production. It controls significant portions of battery supply chains, rare earth processing, and high-volume manufacturing capacity. Translating that ecosystem into electric aviation shortens development timelines. Charging infrastructure, battery engineering expertise, and motor production networks already exist domestically. The flying car does not emerge in isolation. It emerges from an existing electric mobility foundation. Meanwhile, U.S. regulatory frameworks remain cautious. The Federal Aviation Administration has not yet certified any eVTOL for widespread commercial passenger operations. Certification pathways in the United States often extend into multi-year testing and review cycles. China's centralized regulatory structure allows faster alignment between industrial output and airspace policy decisions. When production facilities rise while rule books are being finalized, momentum builds quickly. This raises a larger question. If flying cars transition from prototype to early commercial reality in China before anywhere else, does that represent a shift in technological leadership? Aviation innovation has long been associated with American aerospace dominance. From jet engines to commercial aircraft manufacturing, the United States set the pace for decades. Now a different nation is attempting to industrialize vertical personal flight first. Whether these vehicles become mainstream depends on safety validation, infrastructure development, and public trust. Yet the trajectory is undeniable. A dedicated factory exists. Regulatory frameworks are accelerating. Production targets are public. When a country moves from experimentation to scaling, the global industry takes notice. Now step back and look at the timeline, because that is where this story becomes strategic instead of futuristic. Xpeng Aero HT has publicly stated that initial customer deliveries are targeted for 2026. That is not decades away. That is next year in industrial terms. At the same time, Chinese regulators are finalizing broader low-altitude airspace frameworks, with 2027 marked as a milestone for structured implementation. When manufacturing and regulation converge within the same 2-year window, it signals intent. Why rush alignment unless real deployment is expected? China has declared the low-altitude economy a national growth engine. Estimates from state-linked research groups project that this sector could generate hundreds of billions of dollars in economic value within the next decade, with long-term forecasts crossing into the trillion-dollar range globally by 2040. That includes passenger mobility, cargo drones, emergency response aircraft, and urban aerial logistics. Flying cars are not isolated gadgets. They are entry points into an entirely new transportation layer. Urban congestion provides the demand argument. Cities like Shenzhen, Guangzhou, and Shanghai face chronic traffic bottlenecks despite massive public transit networks. Even incremental adoption of vertical mobility for high-income commuters or specialized services could relieve pressure on existing infrastructure. If a 30-kilometer flight takes 15 minutes compared to 90 minutes on congested roads, adoption curves can accelerate quickly. But here is the deeper question. Is the urgency purely about traffic relief or about technological positioning? Consider the global urban air mobility market. Industry forecasts suggest it could exceed $1 trillion by 2040. Early movers influence standards. Standards influence certification norms. Certification norms influence global supply chains. If Chinese firms deploy operational systems first, they shape expectations for safety metrics, charging interfaces, rotor redundancy standards, and pilot training requirements. That type of influence extends beyond domestic borders. The United States still maintains strong aerospace leadership, but American eVTOL firms remain in staged certification processes. Joby Aviation and Archer Aviation have conducted extensive test flights, secured investment partnerships, and announced projected service launches in the 2026 to 2028 window. However, none have yet entered large-scale production. China's Guangzhou facility, once fully operational, is expected to produce thousands of modular units annually. Industrial capacity creates leverage. When output scales before competitors finalize paperwork, perception shifts. There is also the infrastructure factor. China has aggressively expanded electric vehicle charging networks nationwide. Integrating aviation-grade charging nodes into existing grids reduces rollout complexity. Designated vertiports, low-altitude corridors, and smart air traffic management systems are already being piloted in select provinces. Coordinated national planning accelerates integration. In contrast, fragmented municipal and federal coordination in other countries can slow deployment timelines. Does centralized planning become an advantage when a new transportation layer is introduced? Then there is symbolism. 2027 carries significance for multiple Chinese strategic milestones. It marks the centennial of the People's Liberation Army and has been referenced in broader modernization goals across technology and defense sectors. While flying cars are civilian products, technological prestige intersects with national ambition. When a nation demonstrates leadership in emerging mobility technologies, it reinforces a broader narrative of innovation capacity. Another dimension often overlooked is dual-use capability. Electric vertical takeoff aircraft are not limited to commuting. They can serve in disaster relief, rapid medical evacuation, infrastructure inspection, and emergency logistics. During floods, earthquakes, or urban crises, vertically mobile platforms provide flexibility where roads fail. Nations that normalize and scale such systems domestically develop operational familiarity that can be applied across sectors. Civilian mobility often lays groundwork for strategic resilience. The shock factor in the United States is less about surprise and more about timing. For decades, flying cars existed in research labs and speculative prototypes worldwide. Now one country appears ready to commercialize them at scale. Even if initial volumes remain modest, symbolic first-mover advantage matters. Aviation dominance historically aligned with Western industrial power. A visible shift in early urban air. Mobility leadership challenges that legacy. However, normalization is not guaranteed. Public adoption depends on safety validation, cost accessibility, noise management, and regulatory enforcement. Early flying car models will likely carry premium price tags, limiting ownership to affluent buyers or fleet operators. Airspace congestion at low altitudes introduces new regulatory complexity. A single high-profile accident could stall momentum. Technology breakthroughs do not erase risk management. Still, momentum is visible. A dedicated production plant exists. Thousands of test flights have been completed. Regulatory milestones are dated. Charging ecosystems are expanding. Urban pilot zones are being designated. These are not theoretical slides in a presentation. They are physical steps toward operational deployment. So the broader question emerges. When vertical personal mobility moves from imagination to routine practice in one country before others, does that reshape perceptions of technological leadership? Transportation revolutions historically defined eras. Railroads expanded empires. Automobiles reshaped cities. Commercial aviation shrank continents. If flying cars become visible above Chinese skylines first, even in limited numbers, the symbolic message will be powerful. The next few years will determine whether this remains a niche experiment or the foundation of a new mobility tier. What is certain is that the race is no longer hypothetical. Factories are active. Regulations are advancing. Production targets are announced. The sky is no longer just open space. It is becoming a contested industrial territory. If you want to stay ahead of the biggest global tech shifts before they hit the headlines, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications.